Hey guys, welcome back. We are going to be talking about problems with the board account, and we're going to learn a new voting method today called Copeland's method. So we'll just get right to it here. Yesterday we learned about this method called the board account, where we assign points to different positions on the preference schedule. Okay, so a first place vote was worth maybe 4 points, and then a second place vote would be worth 3, so forth and so on. And whoever had the most points at the end was considered the Borda winner. All right. So what's wrong with this method? It seems to be pretty fair. It gives way to some of the candidates who don't necessarily get first place, and it also prevents your more objectionable candidates from winning a vote. Okay, well, it violates one of the fairness criterion, and this is going to be a new fairness criterion that you need to know about here, the majority criterion. All right, and it states that if a choice has a majority of first place votes, that choice should be the winner. And even though sometimes it doesn't seem like the majority candidate, if there is a majority winner out there, it doesn't seem like the majority candidate is the best choice because maybe so many other people don't like that particular candidate. It is fair that if the majority of people prefer that candidate, that they should be the winner. Okay, and if you recall in our last example, and I'll scroll up here so we can look at that one more time, when we did the vote for where the conference was supposed to be, there were 100 votes, and Seattle got a majority of the first place votes. It got 51 of the votes. But we were unsure about whether or not Seattle was the best choice because everybody else, the other 49 people, did not like Seattle at all. But when you get the majority of the first place votes, which Seattle did, Seattle should be the winner according to the fairness criterion that we are learning about. Okay, so that is the big problem with board account, is that you could have a situation where somebody wins and they are not necessarily the majority winner. All right, and sometimes you like that. Other times you might not. Okay, so just so you know, the board count is one of the more common variations used in sporting events. So like when we're trying to determine the MVP for baseball or a Heisman Trophy winner, when they do the voting for the Heisman winner or the most valuable player in baseball, and I think it's also used in basketball. But they use a variation of the board account to determine that winner. So it is a very commonly used voting system, and it is liked by a lot of people. All right, so let's learn about a new method. We're going to call this one Copeland's method, and it is a spin-off of the Condorcet method. So it's not going to seem very new to you. The only difference really between Copeland's and Condorcet is that with the Copeland's method, you don't have to beat everyone else in a one-on-one matchup. You just have to have the most one-on-one wins. Okay, so whoever gets the most one-on-one wins is usually the Copeland winner. All right, so what we do is we look at every single possible matchup there is between any two candidates, and if you win in a matchup, you get a point. If you tie with another candidate, you get half a point, and if you lose, you get 0 points. At the end, we tally up the points, and whoever has the most points is the Copeland winner. All right, and that means that they would have the most what we call pairwise wins. All right, so when you get to my open math, it could be called Copeland's or it could be called pairwise comparisons. They're both the same thing. Okay. I try and look up where these methods are used. So this one was definitely used by Wikipedia from the research that I can find. So Wikipedia uses this particular method with their board of trustees. So let's take a look at a quick example here. All right, so this was the vacation group example from the beginning of the chapter, and we're going to determine the winner using Copeland's method. Now, I've already filled everything out here, so I'm just going to kind of walk you through it. All right, so the first step is that we need to look at each pair of choices and their one-on-one comparisons. Since we only have 3 choices that we were considering for the vacation club, there's only 3 possible matchups. So there's Hawaii versus Orlando, Hawaii versus Anaheim, and Anaheim versus Orlando. All right, so those are the only 3 possible two-way matchups there. And then we look at them head to head, right? So when we do Hawaii versus Orlando, We did that when we did the Condorcet method before, and Hawaii had won that 6-4. So we would assign Hawaii 1 point. All right, then we would look at Anaheim versus Orlando. Anaheim wins that one 7-3, so we would assign Anaheim 1 point. Then we would do the same thing with the last one here, Hawaii versus Anaheim. See who gets the most votes between those two, which Hawaii does, 6-4, so Hawaii would get a 2nd point. All right, and then when we look at that, we would say Hawaii is the winner under Copeland's method, having earned the most points, right? Because Hawaii would get 2 points, Anaheim would get 1, and Orlando gets 0. All right, so notice that this process is consistent with our determination of a Condorcet winner, in that not only is Hawaii a Copeland winner, it is also a Condorcet winner because Hawaii beats everyone else one-on-one. But you don't have to do that in Copeland's method. All right, so now we're going to take a look at one. We're going to work through this one a little bit more from scratch. Okay, and this was the advertising groups vote that we did before, so we had this same preference schedule in a previous example, but now we're going to apply Copeland's method to it. All right, now the hardest part for students is just setting up all of the possible one-on-one candidates or one-on-one matchups when we have a lot of choices. So this one's got 5 candidates. All right, and the way that I go through and make sure that I get all of the matchups is I go through it systematically. So I do all of the A matchups first. So A versus B, A versus C, A versus D, A versus E. Okay, so I got all of the A matchups that are possible. And then I go through and I do the B matchups. So B versus C, B versus D, B versus E. And notice that there's only 3 B matchups versus 4 A matchups, and that is because one of the B matchups was already accounted for when I did the A's. So there'll be 4 A matchups, 3 B matchups, then 2 C matchups, because 2 of the C matchups are already up here. All right, so we only have to do C versus D and C versus E, and then by the time we get to D, there's only 1 left. All right, so very systematic, and it guarantees that you won't miss any of the matchups. All right, now this one I have filled in, so I'll show you how I got the 11-9. So I just come up here and I do A versus B. I only care about A and B in each of the columns. All right, so in this one, A loses. In this one, A wins. So A gets 4 votes here. And then here, A loses. Here, A wins. So he gets those 6 votes. Here, A is below B, so A loses. And then here, A is above B, so A would get this vote. All right, so we have 4 plus 6 plus 1, which is 11 votes for A, which means the other 9 votes have to go to B, all right, because there is a total of 20 votes. Okay, so 11-9, which means A gets a point. Right, and we're going to do the same thing for each of these subsequent matchups, but I'm not going to make you watch me do those. What I would do right now is I would pause the video and I would go through these yourself and then play the video, and I'll have all of these calculated for you so that you can check your answers and see how you did. All right, so go ahead and pause the video, and I'm gonna go ahead and start writing these down. All right, guys, welcome back. Again, check your work here, see if you got the same results that I did, but this is what I did. I went through each one-on-one matchup, tallied up the votes, and determined the points. So for instance here, A versus D, I got a tie, 10-10, so I awarded A and D half a point each. Okay, so that's what it looks like when they tie. Same thing here, the other tie that I got was at B versus C, so that's the half point. So now that I've got all my points assigned, I just need to tally them up and see who has the most at the end. Okay, so when I tallied it up for A, I got 2.5 points. When I tallied it up for B, I got 1.5, so forth and so on. So for instance, like when I did D, I just went through my list here. So there's a half point for D, there's another point for D, another point, and another point. So 1, 2, 3 and a half right here. So that's how I got 3.5 points for D. And I did the same thing for each of the other candidates. Okay, so if we notice, D has the most points at the end of this long process, and D is our Copeland winner. All right, So Copeland might be a little bit more tedious than the Borda count because especially if you have a lot of candidates, because you got a lot of matchups that you have to go through. So this one with 5, you saw how many there were. If we had 6, we would have more, 7 candidates, even more, and it gets really tedious. The good news is that if you ever end up doing this stuff professionally, you can usually use a computer to automate this kind of thing for you, but you do need to know how to program it to do that. So it's good to know how the process works. All right, so we're going to move on to the next example. Oh, something else to point out is that D is not a Copeland winner because D did not beat A, right? They tied, okay? So D is a Copeland winner but not a Condorcet winner. Okay, that's what I meant to say. Sorry about that. D is not a Condorcet winner because it was not able to beat A. Okay? All right, here we go. Let's go to the next example. Do it one more time. Here we got our election with G, M, and B again. What we're going to do when we see these ballots here, so for instance, this 20 votes, B and M do not appear here, so these 20 votes will not be counted in that one-on-one matchup. All right, so here we go. Get this set up, our 3 matchups. Right, I'm going to start with G, so I'm going to do G versus M. Do that one first, and then we'll do G versus B. And then we'll do M versus B. Right, we don't have to do M versus G because we already got that. And then there would be no B matchups because the 2 B matchups are covered here. So like I said, when there's 3 choices, you're going to get 3 matchups that you need to tally up. Okay, and I'll do the first one with you and let you do the other 2 on your own. So when we do G versus M, right, we're only looking at G and M's position throughout these ballots, right? So G wins here, so G is going to get these 44. G wins here, so G will get those 14. Even though M's not here, we're going to give G these 20 votes because G had the first place position. And then G loses to M, G loses to M, G loses to M, and then neither G nor M appear in this ballot, so these 39 don't count. Okay, so when I tally up how many votes, if I tally up these 3 here, we should get 78 votes for G. And then these 3, 70, 22, and 80, those will all go to M. All right, and that should be 172 votes. So that means M gets 1 point. Okay, and you would go through and do the same thing. So if you want to pause and try and do these 2 on your own and see if you get the same numbers that I do, go ahead and do that. All right, welcome back. So here are the results for the other 2. So we got 148 for G here versus 141, and then we have 136 for M versus 133 for B. So here G is going to get a point, and M gets a point. All right, so if I were to tally up our points, we would say M has 2 points, G has 1 point, B has 0 points. So M is a Copeland winner. All right, guys, that is the Copeland technique or the Copeland method, along with what was wrong with the board account. Try the daily practice problems. If you got questions, shout it out in the Zoom chat. Have a great day, guys.